We received a call about 10:30 from the state police barracks up in Fayette County. And I had talked to the trooper who had just came back from the scene of this incident, and he felt that something definitely had gone on. And the main person involved in it, the farmer's son who had seen the creatures and shot at them, was at the barracks at the time, so I questioned him over the phone. And they had indicated the object had landed and was sitting on the ground, and that the creatures had been seen, and that there was a glowing area, a glowing ring, that was apparent after the object had disappeared. So we got together a field team. We had Dave Smith, who's a physics teacher and a civil defense radiation defense officer. We had a professional photographer, George Lutz, who is a co-director of our group, who's a former Air Force pilot in the Major in Air Force Reserves. Can't think we had a sociology major with us, and myself. So we went up, we made arrangements to meet with the farmer's son, who's 22 years old, who was the main witness, but he looks much older for his age. He's about 6'2", weighs about 270 pounds, somewhere around there, 280
How was
pounds.
this the following day?
No, that was that night, a couple hours after the incident occurred. The incident occurred at 9 o'clock.
And you were there about 11?
Well, they called us about 10:30 till we got up there. It's over about an hour drive. I'd say we got there around 12:30. And till we got to the scene, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. But anyhow, before we got to the scene, we interviewed them, and he related how about 9 o'clock, about 15 of the people in the area had seen a glowing red ball in the sky, spherical, slowly descending towards the ground. So this fella, George, and these two 11-year-old twins from down the road, they ran to his house, and they got a 30-06 rifle, and they proceeded up in his truck up the back road towards the pasture area. And they could see the object slowly descending towards the ground. And it was getting larger, of course, as it came down. Their headlights on the truck started to dim. And they were just going up toward the top of the hill, the horizon, the hill, and disappeared over the horizon. So they got out of their truck and started walking up the hill, and they could see it sitting on the pasture, apparently right on the ground, or else inches above it. They said it was much larger than a house, about 100 feet in diameter. And it was like a dome or a bubble-shaped thing. And it was bright white at this time. It was making a sound like a loud lawnmower. Their eyes started to water a little from the brightness of it. And then they heard these loud screaming sounds coming from the vicinity of the craft. Something like a lady scream or whatever, but unusual screaming sounds. And then after about a minute or so, one of the boys yelled that there was something moving up along the fence line. So they pointed up there, which was opposite where the craft was on the ground, and there were these two figures walking towards them. At first they couldn't tell exactly what they were. They assumed they were bears. But from the light of the craft, and also this fellow had two military tracer rounds, which he fired directly over their head, and just lit up for a second, but it gave them some more insight into what they were observing. Anyhow, they were then able to make out at least one figure was about 8 foot tall and the other one around 7 foot. They are described very similar to the other creatures, completely covered from hair from head to toe, long arms almost reaching to the ground. They're making crying sound to each other. There was a smell like burning tire, burning rubber, and they had, in these cases, glowing green eyes, which we had in another case in Beaver Falls a week later of a landing and creatures being seen. Anyhow, he fired a tracer round over their head. Then he fired a warning shot, a 30-06 over their head, to see if they would slow down, but they kept approaching. Two of them, they were about 60 feet away. One of the boys, upon seeing this, ran, became hysterical, and the other boy stayed with George. Then he fired directly into the larger creature. Each time he hit it, it made a louder crying sound, and then finally it raised its right hand up, almost touching the smaller creature, which was walking in front of it. And all of a sudden, as it raised its hand, the object in the field just disappeared. The light just went out and disappeared, and the sound stopped. And then the creature slowly turned around and started walking back into the woods. So at this point, they were both quite shook up, and they ran back to call the state police. And the state trooper came out to the area. And George went back up with him. He went and notified the state police. The state trooper went back to the area, I believe around 10:30. I think he went out there around 10 or 10:30 until he got a call by radio to go out to the area. And George told him what he had seen. The trooper proceeded up to the area. Trooper verified that they did see what appeared to be a glowing ring about 150 feet in diameter where the object had been sitting. And he said that the ring was bright enough that if you sat down in it, you could read a newspaper by it. It was only glowing from a height of about 1 foot off the ground. But he also said that he could see the small plants inside of the glowing area, so it was fairly bright.
Now, this was the police agency?
The state trooper
Yes.
was with them. They both saw that. And he said they were walking up along the woods where George had seen the creatures, and the trooper confirmed that every time they'd walk, they'd hear something following them along the woods. He said from the sound of it, it didn't appear to be real big, but it was following them around, and every time they would stop, the sound would keep moving for a few seconds, and it would stop. When they started moving, it would move. Basically, that's what occurred there. Before that went back, George had the opinion something was coming out of the woods. He heard it coming towards him, and he claimed he saw a dark figure coming out of the woods, and so he took a shot at it, and they ran in a state police car, and they turned around and got out of there. And that's when they went back to the barracks, and they called us, and we went up.
All right, now when you arrived, the glow was all gone.
There was nothing there. We took radiation tests immediately first.
All right, now did you go back the following day?
We were there for a number of days afterwards.
All right, now was there any physical trace left that
There
you
was
could
no
find?
physical trace. There was nothing that indicated that it definitely had been on the ground. It may have been right above. But the animals would not go near the area. The horses and cattle and dogs, and as the trooper said too, the animals were extremely nervous.
Now, were they avoiding the area?
They were
after
avoiding the
trip?
area after where they had disappeared from. They'd go in the outskirts of it, but not in the immediate area where it was. That's the only visible sign you could see.
All right. Then, of course, there was no opportunity for you to use any infrared photography up there.
No. Well, after the incident occurred that Earl probably related to you, did he tell you about what happened that night?
No.
With the mind control, whatever, the takeover?
Now, what did happen to the mine takeover in this case?
Well, we went back, and we were up there, and we were looking around the area, and it must have been probably around 20 till 1 when we were up in the field checking for radiation, looking for any evidence. And George and his father were down below at the truck, who was the main witness. And all of a sudden, both of them yelled, told us to run down, and we went down, and they said that the whole area by the house had lit up bright green. For a second, the whole area lit up real bright. So the father was concerned, so one of our fellows and George's father got in the Jeep, went down the house, looked it over, couldn't find anything. They came back 10 minutes later. We proceeded up along the area where George claimed he had seen the creatures. So on the way up, we were just talking and so forth, and all of a sudden the bull, which was up there, came running out of the woods and was staring up towards one part of the wooded area. Wasn't bothering paying any attention to us at all. And all of a sudden his dog also started picking up a scent of something and started sniffing his way up towards there, and he stopped and started looking around. One of the guys in our group was on one side of George, and George's father, George is the main witness, of course, and George's father was on his other side, and they were just talking to him, asking questions about it, and one guy in our group asked him about where exactly they were standing or whatever, and he didn't answer him. Then he asked him again, and when he looked at him, he was like going like this, rubbing his hands over his head, and he thought maybe a branch had hit him. And he asked him a question again, and all of a sudden George had his hand over his head, and he started waving back and forth like he was going to faint or collapse. So he yelled to his father to grab him right away, something was happening. And they were trying to get him down on the ground, but he wouldn't get down. He started breathing real heavy and heavy. Then all of a sudden he just threw them both. He just threw them both to the ground, the father and the other guy in our group. And all of a sudden they started leaving out these very loud screams. He started walking around in motion just like a wild animal. And he started swinging and screaming. His own dog attacked him. And the dog started crying after that. And he was making... The dog started crying.
And you witnessed this?
We have it all on tape, the whole thing as it happened.
Oh,
everything. Anyhow, George was going around making these terrible sounds, and the last roar that he made is identical to the sound of these creatures we have taped. It's a sound that you couldn't duplicate with a human voice. And all of a sudden he just more or less just collapsed directly on his face, just straight down right into the... There was horse manure all over the place, and just came straight down with his face into the ground. And we ran over and picked him up. Just after this occurred, one of the other fellows, well, they was with us too, one of the other fellows in our group started to get lightheaded, and he couldn't maneuver properly, and he was down on his knees. And then Dave couldn't breathe at all. You had trouble breathing. And then this terrible, strong chemical odor came out of the woods. We all smelled it. Most of us all smelled it at the time. This came out in a wave, just like the same thing all the witnesses have described with the creature. This very strong sulfuric-like smell. Almost if you took these old kitchen matches and struck them, but they didn't light. It was a very strong smell like that. We were getting George out of there. He was finally on his feet, and one of our other guys, we were getting him back down, and we realized that something was happening, unusual. We wanted to get out of the area very quickly, which we, thank God, did. This fellow George, as he came out of it, he was talking about this man in a dark cape with a hood that was calling him and told him that the man didn't hurry up and shape up, that the end would come soon. And things of this nature would happen. There's no way we can really describe the whole incident. The closest thing you can describe to it is what is known as diabolical or demon possession. However, in this case, and from the reports we've had since, even though I've always been very reluctant to connect UFOs and creatures, no doubt there probably is a connection now. But it seems that there is some type of mind control involved in these cases, where they are able to take control of certain people at certain times. And Dr. Schwartz was here from New Jersey working on the case. We've had other people involved in it. We've had a number of other similar cases now people have come forward to who were involved in a Bigfoot situation where they have had all types of psychic phenomena, poltergeist activity, memory lapses, and things of this nature, all in the last few months associated with the Bigfoot cases. And these are people who had no previous knowledge of this. In most of these cases, like in one case, the teenage boy told his mother about it, but he doesn't want to talk to anybody about it because he said he's afraid to, because he feels that somebody's watching him, and if he says anything about it, something will happen to him. And he's had 2 car accidents since the occurrence, where there was no reason why he should have had a car accident. In fact, another boy who was with him at the initial experience also had a car accident in a different car on the same night.
All right. Now, did you personally have anything which smacked of mind control?
To me?
Yes.
Nothing happened to me except the smell. We all smelled it at the time.
Yes.
And believe me, the guys in the group, especially some of the guys who were there that night, are extremely skeptical. Okay? They're open-minded but very skeptical. And I would never have believed it unless I saw it myself. But there's no doubt that something happened up there.
Now, the dog attacked
the dog went
master.
After, more or less, yeah.
Well,
and then it started crying.
And then the dog started
Well, the
crying.
dog belongs to the fellow's father. But you would say it's his dog, too.
Yeah, but they were well acquainted one
Oh,
with the other.
definitely. They've spent a whole life out there together.
Now, did he indeed bite the boy?
The dog?
Yes.
No, he got scared. He went after it, and the dog went over and started crying. Moved away and started crying, which is all on the tape.
What do I have to do to get a copy of that tape?
Well, I'll tell you what. It's like this. Dr. Schwartz, there's only 2 of us in our group that have the copy of it. And because of what occurred, Dr. Schwartz, as of right now, asked us not to because of what's involved in it, until we can get more documentation on it and so forth. Because if it got in the wrong hands by mistake, this guy is, like Dr. Schwartz says, he is apparently could be very dangerous. He could kill himself or somebody else without even understanding what's going on.
Has he had any reoccurrences?
Yeah.
He has had.
Not on this, but when certain questions are asked of him, he'll go into a trance. We put around it several times, and he went in, I bet you, a dozen times when Schwartz was here. And anytime certain questions are answered, he'll go into this trance and start rubbing his head again and start to change. We catch him before it happens.
And how do you break it then?
Well, we just scream real loud. George try to change the subject and try to get him off of it.
Is he aware of this takeover?
Well, he wasn't, but Dr. Schwartz has made him aware of it for special reasons now, certain aspects of it.
How does Schwartz fit into the picture? What's his qualifications?
Well, Dr. Schwartz is one of the top, very prominent psychiatrists in the United States, and he spent many years investigating various types of psychic phenomena and contactee cases and so forth. I've been in touch with him for a while, and he was planning on coming down here anyhow about a week later. So when this broke and the guy on the verge of suicide, we asked him and he came down early. And he's been working on the case.
Did he try any hypnotherapy?
He doesn't have to because the situation the way it is. He'll be sending a complete medical report and all, but this fellow is in a state of trance anyhow. It does not need to be put under hypnosis because of the situation he's in.
Not at all times, is he?
No, but it's a very involved case. It'll take us hours and hours to cover everything we found out, what's occurred in this case here. And there's so much involved in it. It's a very complicated matter. And Dr. Schwartz will be writing it up for Flying Saucer Review, the whole medical aspects of it.
Oh, he will?
Yeah.
I want you to get into the Penn Hills case for Mr. Neff.
Okay, well, I don't know too much more about it than really what you do. It happened, I believe, in September we were caught up there. There had been reports of some type of hairy creature seen up in that area. The people had called the TV station in Pittsburgh, who in turn called me, and we went up, contacted the people, went up there the next night, and one fellow was an official of the bank up there who had been one of the fellows who had taken the actual casts. We talked to several fellows, young boys, who had been out there on their motorbikes riding in this oil field where they had seen the creature in the trees and on the ground. And so we went up and obtained the cast and looked over the area. It's interesting, again, it was an oil field because a lot of the cases seem to involve around chemical odors, seem to be attracted to these creatures.
All right, now what was the description of this particular creature?
They said it was like a very large monkey. This does not fit the description of the creatures that we have down here.
What color was he?
They said it was black or dark.
Well, I was thinking this one was white.
And these were up in the trees. This was up in the tree. In one case, it was walking along the road in front of them, but from the angle, with the lights on the motorbike, they could only see from the waist down. And there was a tail on this one. They said they definitely saw a tail, like a large monkey in the trees. But we did find that people in that area a year before reported seeing some monkeys up there also. What looked like monkeys were afraid to report it.
Do you think there's a possibility that there were monkeys?
Well, of course, anything's possible, but the fact is we've had other reports of smaller creatures like this around here in the spring. And who knows, that apparently from reports we have, several various types of unusual creatures have been showing up all at one time. So I think apparently we're dealing with more than one type of thing. And why all at once is your guess as good as mine.
Yeah, this mind control is extremely fascinating to me because we've had some smackings of this, of course, with some of the contactee people in their relationship to other people.
Yes, that's correct.
So is there anything else you feel you'd like to...
I'll tell you, as soon as there's a lot more, it's going to take us a long time to get all the facts really straightened out and have Schwartz's statements, and when you come back next time, by then I'll probably can fill you in a lot more deeply on what the aspects of it are.
Okay, Stan, thanks a lot for this, and gee, I could actually give a great deal just to, because this subconscious control is of extreme importance to everybody.
Extreme importance, and it's extremely dangerous. And it's anymore, as you'll find, that most UFO investigators have never gotten this involved in it. But they'll find that this is nothing to play with. It's not a game.
Do you feel like you have any immunity to it?
I don't think anybody does, because we don't know the full extent of what we're dealing with. But it's like this. I feel that if they wanted to hurt us, there was nothing stopping them that night. We were out isolated from anyone else. We were all there, and apparently something was there. And the animals sensed it. If it wasn't for the fact that the animals had sensed it and we had smelled it, I would have said, well, this guy, there was something, a psychological aspect about it, even though his medical records don't indicate any of this type of thing. So there's no reason why this should have occurred to him. And plus the fact that we had 3 people saw the creatures, 15 people saw the UFO landing, plus the fact we've had other cases now from other counties with creatures and the mind control aspects coming up that I can't laugh at it. There's something definitely happening.
Yeah, well, of course, you have a growing cataloging of this type of incident.
That's correct.
Of course, the frequency and the similarity is bound to lend credence to previous stories.
Yes, but this is something, again, that you couldn't come out publicly with because, first of all, it's something we don't understand, and it's something would greatly be ridiculed, but it's extremely a serious problem.
I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but a Kroger truck driver was down here in this area, and he gave us most of these details in Akron. Now, I don't know where he got them, but he did give us most of these details.
About what?
About the incident up there on the farm.
Well, he probably heard about the shooting. It was in the papers up there.
It was in the papers?
Papers, yeah. That's all I'm going to give you.
And about this glowing circle?
Glowing circle, I think I mentioned about a glowing ring. But this guy probably mentioned to other people around Uniontown, too. A word spread pretty fast after it was in the papers.
Because I was surprised.
But nobody knows about this mind control aspect, except the state troopers, that's all.
And how did they
they're
relate to it emotionally?
The state police are taking it extremely serious, and they're not laughing a bit. They gave us fantastic cooperation, and as well as many other barracks all over the state who have been helping us out tremendously.